Special thanks to Serial One for sponsoring this video. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming out here and bringing your Harley Davidson. This is the Serial One. What do you think, huh?
Wow. I love the black. Belt drive.
So this is a kind of a Harley thing, right?
It is. Same belt. Harley's been running belts for decades. Wouldn't have it any other way. Speaking of maintenance, where do you change the oil in this thing?
There's no oil in this thing. I talked about why we should all be driving electric vehicles quite a bit on this channel, but maybe I was wrong. I mean, I still 100% believe that EVs are the future and better in every way. But maybe we shouldn't be thinking about just replacing every gasoline mile with an electric one. For so many of us, some of the time, a big 4,000-pound, 5-passenger vehicle just isn't needed. Bicycles aren't exactly new, so why am I bringing this up now? Well, this is the Rush City Step-Through electric bicycle from Serial One, a company born inside the legendary Harley Davidson. I've been riding it for over a month now and shockingly averaging over 6 miles a day, up from almost no exercise at all. So ditch the gym membership, forget the Metro card, leave your EV in the garage, and let's go pedaling, right? Welcome to Mount Helix here in San Diego. From here to the top of the hill, it's about 1,000 feet, which is why I've never ridden a bike up here. I'm not in that kind of shape. But with the Serial One, I have made this trip now every day for almost a week. And yes, it's still tiring and still challenging, but I can actually do it. And that's one of the things about this bike. This is truly a bicycle. You gotta pedal. And right now I'm in sport mode, but as you ride, it just helps you along. I am not in the kind of shape to be able to make it up this hill without some help. I've seen the people on this hill, the real avid bicyclists, and here, I'll turn off the assist, okay? So I'll go back down. Oh, this is how you have to go uphill. And I would last for about 2 minutes like this. But now I'm in eco, now I'm in tour, now I'm in sport, and all of a sudden, I'm not just making it up the hill, but I'm doing it at 8 miles an hour. So who is this bike for? If you live where there's hills like I do, there might just be roads you would never ride before, that now you can. But if you live, let's say 15 miles or something from work, and you just never thought to ride your bike to work because, well, you'd be exhausted and sweaty. Well, now with this, you just might be able to. And with 50 miles of range, you can make it to work and back, and you'd be fine. This is a serious uphill ride. I don't know if you can tell in the video, but this is, I am totally winded. One of my friends has an e-bike with a throttle. Really, he can sit back, not pedal, pull on the throttle, and it does all the work. I think what he bought is a very dinky little motorcycle. It's not really a bicycle in my opinion. And that's what this is. This is for somebody who likes riding bicycles, who just wants a little bit of assistance whenever needed. This bike comes with some various modes. As I mentioned, there's off, which is just a bicycle, very hard. Then there's eco, obviously it'll last the longest. Then there's tour, which is where I'd spend most of my time, I think. Sport is the next level up from there. And then finally, there's boost. And in boost, I'm not just going uphill, I'm flying uphill. The greatest features of this bike, I've had this thing for a month, been riding for a month, come down to 2 things. The first is the sensor that detects what you're trying to do, as far as when you want to speed up or slow down, is in the pedal. So what that means is, let's say I'm coming along and I want to speed up. Well, I start pedaling faster and the motor kicks in and I start moving faster. Most e-bikes actually have the sensor in the wheel. The problem with that is, to go faster, you got to put in enough power to move the wheel to go faster, to then get help to go faster. That's a lot more difficult than having it in the pedal. The second thing, the reason why you want this bike over another is the Enviolo hub on the back of the rear wheel, which basically has a continuously variable transmission in it. So what that means is you get the smartphone app, connect to your hub using a little pairing system, and then you set up the cadence you want to keep. So for me, it's about 70 RPM. And at 70 RPM, if you look at my feet right now, I'll slow down, but no matter what happens, my feet don't change. So here's just crawling along. I'll go even slower. So here's like 1 mile an hour. Okay, but look at my feet. The pace, and then I'm gonna start speeding up and try to fly, but look what happens. The hub is constantly shifting and keeping my cadence exactly where I set it in the app. The one thing to remember here is in the app, there is a calibration mode. So when you first get it and you adjust it, run the calibration, ride around for a while, and then you're good to go. So let's switch gears and talk about range. As I mentioned, I'm riding mainly up this hill, which is really, really tough, obviously, on motors and batteries. So I'll say I'm getting about 15 miles, 10 to 15 miles of range purely up this hill. And then on more conventional roads, I was getting about 50 miles. The last time I charged, I had 50 miles and I still had some battery left. So really it'll depend wildly on your conditions, but range is awesome. So on this downhill section, I should talk about the one feature I wish the bike did have and doesn't, which is regenerative braking downhill. So I could charge my battery instead of having to use my brakes, but it doesn't have that. The good news is the brakes are incredible. They're 4-piston disc brakes on front and back. And here's what happens when I slam on them. Look at that. Yeah, I stopped pretty much instantly. When it comes to charging up your Serial 1, there's a couple of choices. First, you can just leave the battery in place and plug it into the wall charger, which is what I normally do in the garage. Or if you're like in an office environment, you can take the battery pack out of the bike and charge it with the wall adapter with a little adapter that allows you to charge the battery outside the bike. Another feature I love about this bike, something that Paul noted on the Harley Davidson that he rides, is this bike doesn't have a chain. Instead, it has a belt. So this is a carbon fiber reinforced belt drive. And the beauty of that is that it doesn't stretch out like a normal chain. The metal links in the chain stretch out over time and get droopy, and you have to grease them because, well, it's metal on metal contact everywhere. All those problems are gone with a belt like this. So it's way less maintenance. Oh, the motor. Let's talk about the motor. Well, the motor is housed right here where the pedal axis comes out of, very low and central to the bike. Now, most e-bikes have a hub motor that lives in the back wheel. The problem with that is that the motor is probably the heaviest part about the entire assembly. And if you put it way far back behind the center of mass of the bike, you lose that bike characteristic. So here's what I mean by that. I'm gonna turn the power off, so I'm just in manual mode, but as I move around at low speed with no help, the bike feels like it should. It feels like a bike. The weight is right. When you ride other e-bikes, you'll notice that it has a little bit of a weight bias toward the back. Maybe the battery pack isn't quite right. So as a result of the location of that motor, it doesn't affect the dynamics of the bike in any negative way. It still feels like a bicycle. In fact, turn the assist motor off entirely, and sure, it's a hefty bike. It weighs about 50 pounds or something, but other than that, it feels about as normal as any other bicycle. Well, except for that hub with the CVT that you don't have to shift gears and all that kind of stuff. You wanna race? All right, I'm gonna go to boost. Uphill? All right, you might have an advantage here, but let's go. 1, 2, 3, go. I'm going 15, uphill. 18. I just beat my cameraman on his one wheel. So I have the City Rush step over, which has a top speed of 20 miles an hour, which means I almost hit it right there. But when you hit 20 miles an hour, the motor turns off and it becomes a normal bike. And so that is something to think about. If you want that extra speed, the top end model is the speed and it goes up 28 miles an hour. So not gonna lie, kind of wish I had that just for fun, but for most cases, I think 20 miles an hour is more than sufficient. Another feature we can talk about is how easy it is to get started uphill. On a normal bike, you better have shifted down to your lowest gear because it's really hard to shift once the wheels are stopped. Here, the hub, automatic. I'll put it in sport mode, and because the sensor for input is on the pedal, not the wheel, all I have to do is just stick on it and here we go. It's also a really gorgeous bike. First of all, it's this kind of combination of matte black on the forks and kind of a piano, like a glossy black everywhere else. But it's also the welds and how beautifully the bike is put together. You don't have any exposed wires. All the wires for the brakes and the motor and everything else is all integrated, which is so nice. Also, because of this really well-designed structure of the bicycle, they could get rid of the bar that goes up here normally, and it still has all the rigidity of a typical bicycle. You can tell from how heavily and labored my breathing is that I'm getting a workout. It's just, I could make it up this hill. That's just something I wouldn't have been able to do before. And that gets to one thing I wanted to finish off with, which is I've had this bike for about a month. And during the lockdowns that happened about 18 months ago, most of my friends went one of two ways. One, they started working out more than ever. They were home more, they started doing more walking and exercising. Or two, some of my friends, they couldn't go to the gym and their exercising just plummeted. Sadly, I was in group 2. I really haven't had any sort of real exercise in probably 18 months. But when I got this bike, that all changed because now I get to enjoy this, where I live, my beautiful backyard, and I can do it riding up my hill with this bike. I still get a workout. My Apple Watch loves me. I'm closing my rings. And I'm enjoying the scenic nature of where we live. I'm starting to ride my bike to the store, down to meet my friends for happy hour or for a coffee. Really, whenever I can just go without the kids. This has become my favorite way of getting there. So all in, this is about a 4.5 mile ride. Half of it all obviously is really challenging uphill. The other half is largely downhill. So, let's call it like a 2 mile ride, but I've been doing it every day. And this is coming from a person who is not really that good about working out. I've been running my YouTube channel for about 5 years now. And when I first started, I was doing it after work, after my day job. And so I was working super hard and working 2 jobs. And invariably something's got to give. And for me, that was exercise and taking care of myself. And I wish I could say that when I went full time about 3 months ago, I suddenly started working out again, but I didn't. It was a hard habit to break. I didn't really look forward to walking, or I didn't even really have a bike I could ride up this hill. But then when I got this, I could get used to this.